Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at my guild's Mythic Remnant of Ner'zhul kill. So we killed this last night. I was streaming it on Twitch, so there should be a link in the description if you want to stop by and say hello, if you want to catch these kills live. That's a great place for you to come by and ask me personalized questions, right? Like, what should I be doing for XYZ? I love answering questions like that while I'm streaming, so feel free to stop by, like I said. And then the other thing I wanted to say before we get into this video is thank you so much for all of the support on my latest video. It really has kind of popped off, right? There have been a lot of comments, a lot of people have been watching it, and I want to just say I notice you guys, and thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm super glad to hear that it's helping so many of you. Because of the reception on that last video, I probably will end up doing some videos similar to that about how I like go into a boss fight and start to figure out where I want to put my CDs, right? Because it seems like cooldowns are a pretty big deal for a lot of people, right? Obviously. So yeah, so keep an eye out for videos like that in the future. But let's just get into this one. So Mythic Remnant of Ner'zhul, I won't talk too much about what the different mechanics are. This isn't like a boss guide, right? So I'm not going to talk about like your raid should all stand over here while people do this or things like that, but I will talk about how I handled mechanics specifically and things that you can do as a shadow priest, you know, that you should be watching out for, stuff like that, and ways that you can also handle those mechanics specifically, right? So this beginning burn, this is where you just pop all your cooldowns, right? Everybody's gonna be popping all their cooldowns, so we try and keep the boss kind of close to central so that the range don't have to move, melee can stand right there, and there's nothing else going on, so there's no real reason to move the boss away until these orbs come out, at which point our tank will take the boss to one of the orbs, so that his hitbox is inside the orb, and then he'll point it at the other orb. That way, the suffering cast that makes these orbs vulnerable will hit both orbs every single time. So you don't have to have the boss like behind both orbs with a straight line going through both. If you just put the boss inside one of the orbs, this is a pro tip for your tanks or whatever. If you put the boss inside one of the orbs and then just point it at the other orb or orbs, right? Then you can hit both, right? He'll hit whatever orb he's standing inside of. So that's what we do. Because the boss starts, these orbs spawn at random locations, right? So because they spawned a little far away, we have to move the boss pretty far, which means I have to step forward to stay in range of the boss. And I move forward just by casting my Void Bolts and my Devouring Plagues and my Shadow Word Deaths, because you can cast those while moving, right? So you don't have to lose any damage, especially during your cooldowns. We have a lot of mobility in our cooldowns. We don't have to stand still and cast too much. So during your cooldowns, like especially here at the beginning, you've got plenty of time, plenty of instant cast abilities to help you move. So that's what I do. I hit. You can see Void Bolt, Devouring Plague, Shadow Word Death, and then another Devouring Plague. So I can just step forward a little bit so I can keep hitting this boss. He turns and does the Suffering cast, and this is where some people will have a question. Do we hit the orbs? And the answer to that question depends a little bit on what your guild's plan is to handle the orbs. My guild's plan was we needed boss damage big time, and it's likely that your guild as well, when you're fighting this boss, will need boss damage big time. And shadow priests are pretty good at single target damage, like boss damage, right? And we're not very good at hitting these two orbs and using it to funnel into the boss, or immediately turning and blowing up both orbs at the same time, right? This is two target cleave right here, which demo locks, like this Chaos Bolt guy, whoever this is, they're really good at that. So you can let them take care of that. And as a Shadow Priest, I'll mention I played Twist of Fate on this fight. Some people might ask, do I play Misery or Twist of Fate? The answer is play Twist of Fate, almost certainly, because of reasons like this. We're not going to be doing most of the damage to these orbs. We're going to let other people do it. But what we can do, and maybe I do it here, is dot these orbs as they start to get low. That's the only damage I do to either of them. And as they start to get low, you'll see I get Twist of Fate uptime. Because I hit them and then they got below 35% HP, right? Which is when Twist of Fate activates and it increases your damage. So now I'm doing extra damage to the boss that I wouldn't have been doing if those orbs weren't there or if I didn't tag those orbs. And then we get this first Malevolence cast. So I'm going to take this a little bit slow. There's going to be a lot of pausing in this video, as is usual for my videos. So sorry that it's not going to be super condensed. But this first Malevolence cast comes out, and depending on how your guild decides to handle these, it can be kind of a nightmare, or it can be not such a big deal, right? So my guild, we've got the added benefit of having 2 Shadow Priests, as well as I think she's Disc, yeah, as well as a Disc Priest, right? So we've got 3 Mass Dispels available. And what my guild decided to do was we assigned Stumble, who's the other Shadow Priest, and me to Mass Dispel every other set of these bombs. So when this first bomb set comes out, what we do is we choose one of these markers. It's almost always on pull. This first set of bombs is almost always going to be over here by circle. So this, like right over here where my mouse is where the ramp to come into the room is. So it's usually like the back right little area. So like if you were looking at a clock, this would be like 5 o'clock, right? That's where we like to take our first Malevolence. Although it honestly doesn't matter like at all, as long as it's arbitrary, right? You can take it wherever you want, as long as you have a plan, right? So what we do is our raid leader will call one of these 2 people. I have this weak aura that is helping me track when these go off. Our raid leader will call one of these 2 people and tell them to stand on the outside, and then the other person will stand on the inside. And then what we do is the person who's standing on the inside is going to get knocked towards the middle, right? Because we're going to Mass Dispel both of them at the same time. So on Heroic and on Normal, you guys probably have been single dispelling these, right? You'll dispel one person, get blown across the platform, and then dispel another person on that side and get like ping-ponged back, right? On Mythic, it may be beneficial for you to Mass Dispel them rather than dispel them one at a time. Mostly because you can put a lot of healing CDs, right? Your healing CDs are usually like area CDs, so Bubble, or I mean it's called a Barrier. You got Barrier, you got Ashen Hollow, you got Spirit Link. All of those things are like in an area, and if you dispel twice, then you get knocked out of the cooldowns after the first one, and then you have to put more cooldowns down or just not have any cooldowns. So we figured that it was easier if we just Mass Dispel them both at the same time, take a big chunk of damage, and use a healing cooldown there. So that might be something that you want to look into. And like I was saying, what we do is we call one person to go outside, one person to go inside. In this case, it's a Holy Paladin and a Balance Druid. We're almost certainly going to call the Balance Druid to be on the outside and the Holy Paladin to be on the inside, because Balance Druids have ways of getting back on the platform, specifically Wild Charge, right? They can like disengage backwards back onto the platform. Or they can even, if they're Night Fae, I think ours are Venthyr, but if they're Night Fae, they can Soul Shape as they're getting knocked off and stay on the platform, that kind of thing. Whereas Paladins have like nothing. So the Paladin is going to stand on the inside every time. And then what we do with this, sorry to stay paused for so long, but the last thing I'll mention about this bomb set, and all the bombs in general, is that the person who's on the inside needs to face the outside, right? So the boss is going to be pretty close to this area. I'll just hit play and we can see. The boss comes over pretty close, and then you'll notice the Boomkin is on the outside, the Holy Paladin is on the inside. The Suffering cast is going off, and the boss is facing away, right? As soon as that goes off, the boss is going to be turned this way because the tank is going to come over here. And then we're going to Mass Dispel these. And with the Holy Paladin who's on the inside, and anyone who's on the inside, if you face the outside, you'll get knocked back towards the middle, guaranteed every single time. As long as you don't have anybody standing on this like silver rim on the outside, because the silver rim on the outside is really, really buggy. So sometimes it has a weird Z-axis interaction, and it'll knock the person who's standing on it like 5 times further than they would normally be knocked, or it'll knock people in weird directions, that kind of thing. So what you want to do is have this outside person stand about where this Boomkin is, maybe a little bit further, but probably where he is fine. And then have the inside person face outwards. And then the outside person, which will usually be a Shadow Priest if you're put out there, right? If you're one of these 2 people with the bombs on you, you're a good target to have on the outside. Because what we can do is most Shadow Priests are goblins for the mobility, right? Rocket jump. If you're not a goblin, though, there's still hope, because as long as you're Night Fae, I guess, because you can soul shape when the dispel goes off and you can stay on the platform, right? So the person on the outside just needs to face whatever direction will keep them on the platform. And what I mean by this is, for us, for a Shadow Priest, we want to be outside facing in, because our 2 ways of getting back on the platform, at least my 2 ways, right? I'm a Night Fae Goblin. My 2 ways are Goblin Jump, which is forward, right? So I want to be facing in for that. And the other way is Soul Shape, which is also forward, so I want to be facing in for that. If you're a hunter and you want to use Disengage for this, you would want to face outwards, right? Because you're going to get knocked outwards, and then you disengage backwards back on. Same thing with a Boomkin. So we'll watch this guy. He faces forward, forward, forward. The Mass Dispel comes out, and he turns around, and he jumps back, right? So that first Mass Dispel, what we did, we're going to have 1 Shadow Priest Mass Dispel, the first one, and every odd set of bombs. And then me, the other Shadow Priest, is going to dispel the second one and every even set, right? The other thing I'll mention is right there during the knockback is a really great time to press Vampiric Embrace. You can't really be pressing any other damage buttons as you're flying across the platform. Your only options are like all the other options for movement, so Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Pain, or Devouring Plague, I guess. But you're going to need, everybody's going to take a big chunk of damage from that, and you're going to need to heal it up. And I found that pressing Vampiric Embrace on the way across was super helpful. So that's a great time to use that. And then we get another Shatter Cast. Basically, you just need to be aware that there are going to be these puddles on the ground, and the boss is going to do a frontal. And once this helmet thing comes out, we mark it with an X. Once that comes out, it's going to do the frontal as well. So you need to keep an eye on that as well. And then we get these cones. Those should be super easy to dodge. Although in phase 2, I think it is, phase 3, this is phase 2. So in phase 3, when the next piece of armor falls off, it'll duplicate those cones. So you need to keep an eye on the armor as it moves around. And then our raid leader right here is calling that we're going to take this next set of bombs, which is about to come out. We're going to take it to Diamond, right? Or by Diamond. And then I'll walk you through how I handle this Mass Dispel. So what I do is the bombs come out. One's on me, actually, which is going to make this Mass Dispel a little bit harder because you need to have a plan for immediately after the Dispel goes off, right? And it looks like he calls the Boomkin to be on the inside. So this is good for me, right? Because I don't have to worry about Goblin jumping or Soul Shaping here, because I know that when we Mass Dispel, I'm going to get knocked inward regardless, right? If you are called on the outside and you have the bomb on you, and you're the Mass Dispel at the time, then you need to be ready. You need to completely forget about doing damage for a second and just be ready to instantly hit whatever ability you're going to use to get back on the platform. And then I would recommend, you'll see as I start to cast this Mass Dispel, this weak aura that has Mass Dispel all big with the timer, I would recommend getting that because, and maybe I'll put a link to my weak auras. I'll put a link to that one in particular in the description. And if it's not there, leave a comment and say, hey, where's that weak aura you promised us? And I'll link it to you. But it should be there. So anyway, yeah, you want to have that big bar up there, because if you are on the outside, and even if you're not the one dispelling, right, you can know when the Mass Dispel is coming, and then you want to hit with Soul Shape. It's a really, really tight window. With Goblin Jump, it's less of a tight window, but you want to hit your ability to get back on pretty much as soon as you get dispelled. And with, like I said, with Soul Shape, it's a pretty tight window, whereas with Goblin Jump, you can get knocked pretty far and still make it back. You don't have to hit it immediately, right? Okay, so now I'm pressing Fey Guardians and then Void Form. I'm into my, I think this is my third Void Form. And then we're just dodging all these things that come onto the ground. You'll see again that the boss is inside this Orb of Torment and it's pointing towards this other one. I'm keeping an eye on the thing over here, the helmet. And then, again, I just dot these with a Shadow Word Pain, and I go back to focusing the boss. Actually, I focus down this bomb for a bit, because we're holding boss damage right here. So There will be times, depending on how much gear your guild has by the time you get to this boss fight, there may or may not be times where pushing the boss too quickly is going to get you an extra set of orbs, which means the healing requirement is a lot higher than it should be. And if you push him too slowly, then you'll get an extra set of orbs as well, which means the healing requirement is really bad. So honestly, this boss needs to hit 60% HP in like a pretty tight window, maybe like a 10-second window. And then what we do, again, with the Mass Dispels is we just watch this Suffering cast, and as soon as it finishes, we either are already casting Mass Dispel or we start casting Mass Dispel at that point. But typically, what I was doing is I would wait till this says 0.5 or 0.4 or so, and I would start casting it. It only gets a little sketchy to do that in like the last phase, because there's so many orbs that are on the ground that people have to run out that sometimes you got to be careful or else you'll knock people off the edge. So we Mass Dispel this next one. I have to re-up I hit myself with a Shadow Mend, and then I re-up my Vampiric Touch. That's something I would say, especially when these shatters are about to happen. If you're pretty low on HP, these shatters do like a lot of damage. I've got like 63,000 HP right now, and those shatters were doing maybe 75% of my HP, something like that. A lot of damage. So if you are close to one of those shatters and you're not topped off or pretty close to topped off, I would probably suggest holding your health stone and your health pot for the last phase, because it gets really dicey, as you'll see in this kill, because it was not very clean. So I would say probably don't use those this early in the fight, but you can just sit there and spam Shadow Mend on yourself to top yourself off before that shatter goes off. I got one off, right, and then I kept going. Or if your healers are super geared, you can just let them heal you, right? Okay, so now we're into the next phase. You'll see there's also this like shoulder piece floating around. Oh, I think it's a gauntlet actually. Yeah, it's definitely a gauntlet. And the gauntlet, so there's these two different pieces of armor, right? So you got the boss who's casting this frontal, this laser beam. The beam gets duplicated by the helmet, and that starts as soon as you hit 80% HP, and it makes this big white line that goes through the boss. It doesn't just stop at the boss. The line stops at the boss, but the ability goes through the boss. So you need to make sure you're not in between the helmet and the boss, or even on the other side of the boss from the helmet. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then the other thing is this gauntlet will start duplicating the cones that come out. So in like a frontal. So there will be the 3 from the middle as always, but there will also be one from wherever this guy is towards the middle, right? So you got to keep an eye on that as well. So next we've got Bombs 4 coming up and Cones 3. We need to dodge this stuff. I will also mention the Mass Dispel can be really, really finicky, because there are times where, depending on how hard you're pushing the boss and stuff like that, there may be times where you line up for the Mass Dispel, and right as you're about to do it, these pools start spawning underneath your feet. All I'll really say, that gave us a lot of trouble for a long time. All I'll really say about that is, if you start the Mass Dispel right when the circle appears beneath your feet, you have enough time to get the Mass Dispel off before you get hit by the circle, right? And it will knock you out of the circles usually. So don't feel, I mean, it's super sketchy, but there are times where that's the right play. So you do have time in that case. The other thing I'll mention is that if you don't start immediately when the swirlies are coming out, like people aren't there, or you're a little behind for whatever reason, then you need to dodge all of them before you do the Mass Dispel. Because if you just stand there and start your Mass Dispel, you're going to get silenced part of the way through, and the silence is like 3 or 4 seconds long, something like that. And it means that your Mass Dispel is going to be later than if you had just dodged everything and then Mass Dispelled, right? Because you're going to be silenced for so long. So right here, we get one on a Warlock and a Mage. This is an even number bomb. It's bombs number 4, so it's going to be me. So I get over here close to the edge. We put the Mage on the outside because they can just blink as soon as it goes off. They can alter time to come back. They've got a lot of ways of getting back because Mage utility. And then the Warlock stays on the inside. It doesn't really matter what he's doing, although he should face outward, because when you Mass Dispel people like this, it's random who gets it first. So if it so happens to be that the outside guy gets it first and then the inside guy gets it second, even though it's like right on top of each other, if you're the inside guy and you're facing inward, then you can still get knocked outward, even though the outside guy gets dispelled first. It'll knock you inward for like a split second, and then outward because you got dispelled second, even though you get dispelled at the same, quote-unquote, same time, right? So my Mass Dispel goes off, we get knocked. My Vampiric Embrace just came up, so I use it again, and then I use a Mind Blast before I go into Void form. And then we've got another set of orbs right here, and this is what I mean when the cone is getting replicated by the piece of armor, right? So this cone that's coming across the middle here would not typically be here, except in this phase and on, because the armor is duplicating it. And then also, I'll mention that we have 3 orbs out right now. You can see over here on my target frames or whatever, my boss frames is what they're called. We've got 3 orbs, right? And when there's 3 orbs, each of these orbs is doing like pulsing raid damage. So the more of the orbs there are, the more damage everybody's taking. So when there's 3 orbs like this, our guild was saying focus the orbs and ignore boss damage. So what should happen is I'm just going to turn and start blasting one of these orbs. I'm throwing void bolts into it. I'm Shadow Word Deathing it. Yeah, and then I'm all over these orbs with my single target abilities. I'm not going to worry too much about dotting them or anything. And then I'm just going to go back to the boss, because we want to kill those 3 orbs as fast as possible. We get another Suffering cast, and then this should be the Mass Dispel. We get knocked across, and now my Vampiric Touch just fell off, so I re-up it. And then the boss is getting close to 35% HP. We get another set of 3 orbs, and I'll also mention what I said earlier about this cone always going across the middle is wrong, because see right here, it's going across the back, right? So it's just whatever direction this glove is facing, question mark, because I don't think gloves can really face a direction, right? So just keep an eye out for that thing. It's super easy to dodge, right? It just comes out the same time all the other cones come out, so you're going to be dodging them anyway. So just keep an eye on that. Know that it's a thing. And then again, we've got 3 orbs here, so I should probably be focusing these orbs when they get hit by the Suffering cast. So I put a Vampiric Touch on one, I put a Shadow Word Pain on the other and a Vampiric Touch, and then yeah, I'm focusing down this orb. And then we've got Bomb 6 coming up right now. We're going to take it between Circle and Star, probably, it looks like. This beam comes out. Okay, so you'll notice those bombs came out, and then these puddles, and then this beam. Typically, we would dispel as soon as this beam is over, which it almost is, right? But with these swirlies on the ground everywhere, people are not ready for the Mass Dispel, right? You got people way over here, you got people way over here, including me. You got some people almost in the middle of the room because they're dodging these things. So I'm probably going to wait here for a second. Yeah, so I wait just a second, everybody lines up, I dispel it, and we're good to go, right? And then we're going to focus this last orb. This is where we lust. It's right past 4 minutes, which means if you watched my most recent video with the Shadow Priest cooldowns, right? 4:30 is a pretty good lineup for us, right? Because we can hold our I think it's our 5th Mindbender and our 3rd Power Infusion. We can hold both of those until to line them up with that Void form at like 4:30 or so. So this is a great time for us to have all our cooldowns ready. So you'll notice I held that Mindbender and that Power Infusion that just came up for this moment. This is when I should pop all of my cooldowns and just blast the boss, right? So I pop Mindbender, I pop Power Infusion, I hit Shadow Word Death and Mind Blast, and then I'm into my single target opener, basically. And yeah, we're just going to start blasting the boss. You need to keep an eye on these beams, but then from here on out, we're going to ignore the orbs, basically. Maybe we actually we do kill this last set, or maybe we don't. Because in this last final burn phase, it's just a race between you and how many orbs will come out. I need to dodge this frontal. I do manage to dodge that, so that's good. And then, yeah, we're just going to burn and let the orbs sit there doing whatever they're doing. And then this is going to be the end of the fight, right? Oh, actually, this is the last important thing. This Malevolence comes out. You can see how awkward it can be. And then we get into this barrier. And right here should be the next Mass Dispel. It comes off. And then you'll see this is the 3rd piece of armor. I'm not sure what piece of armor it is, but it's the 3rd one. And it's got a Malevolence on it, right? You'll see there's still one of those bombs. Because what happens is at the very end, when he casts that Malevolence, he puts it on 2 players as well as this piece of armor. So you want to position yourself to get knocked towards this armor, and then as this counts down and is about to go off, I should probably Dispersion here just to play it safe, but I don't, as is pretty typical for me. And then yeah, I'm gonna bleed out probably, but then we're just gonna blast the boss to death, because after that Malevolence cast, there's like nothing. You're not gonna deal with any of the mechanics anymore. You're just gonna blast the boss, because look how low he is. I mean, 3%. I popped my final Void Form just to get that extra little bit of damage as we try and kill this boss. And then bada bing, bada boom. That's the end of the boss fight. The boss dies. I actually died right before the boss died. And yeah, there we go. We killed the boss. So at the end of this video, I just wanted to go over real quick and look at my cooldown timings. This is when I pressed Mindbender, Void Eruption, Power Infusion, and Fey Guardians, because some people were asking about that. And here's exactly when I did it, right? So I popped everything on pole, Fey Guardians, Mindbender, Power Infusion, and Void Form, all on pole. It's Mindbender on top, then Void Eruption, then Power Infusion, then Fey Guardians, for anybody who can't read this. So Mindbender should have the most casts, and then Void Eruption should have the second most, and then Power Infusion should have the least, right? And Fey Guardians is kind of, it's going to be close to however many Void Eruptions you have. So what I do is I use Mindbender on CD up until the 4th Mindbender. The one that you cast around 3 minutes, 3 minutes 15, is the last one you're going to use immediately once it comes off cooldown. And then I hold the next one until we hit Lust at like 4:20 or so, right? And then with Void Eruption, I cast it every time as soon as it's up, basically. So at 7 seconds, at 1:33, at 2:56, and then with Lust at 4:26. And then this last one doesn't really matter because the boss is dead at that point anyway. And you don't want to hold this last Mindbender for that, I will mention, because this last Mindbender is like the last cooldown you're really using. This Void Form shouldn't really be here because, I mean it should, because the boss was still alive, but the boss should be dead by here. And then with Power Infusion, you can basically cast it on cooldown. So I casted it at 8 seconds, I cast it at 2:14, so I held it for like 6 seconds. But it lined up with Mindbender right here at about 2:14. And then, again, it lines up with Lust here at 4:20 or so. So I pop it there. And then Fey Guardians, I pop it on pole. I pop it as soon as I'm in Void Form. I actually popped it right before this Void Form, my second Void Form. And I popped it a little bit of the ways into Void Form on the 3rd one. And then I pop it probably like 20 seconds or so after I pop all my other cooldowns for Lust. And that's how I use my cooldowns on this Mythic Remnant of Ner'zhul fight. So hopefully this was helpful. I just want to say again, thank you for all the support recently. I really, really appreciate it. If you liked the video, feel free to hit the like button. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Check the description. Join my Discord. Come chat. Join my Twitch. Come follow me and we'll hang out, you know. You can talk in my chat and we can have a good time. Otherwise, that's going to be the end of this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!